Well, hello, Julie. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing, Jen, on this
You're,
wonderful Tuesday?
I know, back from vacation. I haven't seen you in like 2 weeks because you
I know.
you did real vacation, did you not?
I did for the most part. I worked for 3 days, but the rest of the time I was completely unchecked. And I have to give a shout out to my coach if she's watching this. Her and I worked really hard together to make sure that I separated work and vacation while I was down there. So I was super
Oh,
excited that that came to fruition and such a benefit.
I am very happy. I was obviously sad not to hear from you, but I'm very happy that you disconnected and enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, it was
Um,
nice.
Good. Well, welcome back. It's going to be
Thank
80 this
you.
week, so thank you for bringing warm weather.
You're welcome.
Um, Thank you all for joining today. It's great to see so many familiar faces as well as some new faces. I'm super excited to actually, I don't know, present this. I didn't really think about doing one on communication until a couple months ago. We've been doing so much with planning, but we need to plan how we communicate, which is where the whole concept came from. And yesterday I had fun with the whole Canva thing, and can I have your attention, please? And then I had Eminem racing through my brain all
Hmm.
day, all day. It was amazing. So for those of you who don't know who Julie and I are, real quick background, we obviously met each other well over 10 years ago and started working together at various companies, and we co-founded Joint Pivot back in fall of 2019. So
Hmm.
we are, I'd like to say we're coming up on our 2 year, a lot closer than our year and a half. So
Hmm.
it's been a fantastic year and a half, lots of learning, lots of growth, lots of new things in front of us. It's been very exciting. Julie and I love to solve problems. We love to get to the root cause. We love to create unique solutions right at that pivot point to help companies with their next steps. And our ultimate goal is really to partner with companies and create sustainable solutions that they can own going forward, right? We don't launch and leave. We ensure that we're embedding practices and
Hmm.
behaviors and techniques that continue to deliver improvements. And what do? We can do a lot. We can perform services, you can outsource to us, we can come work under your roof and people don't even know that we're actually a third party. We love to play that third party role and ask challenging questions while not getting engaged in the politics of everything. We also teach, we train the trainer activities, we can train your people to train others or level up in skills and gaps in activities that you want help in and you don't want to necessarily go higher the headcount. And then obviously we love to speak. We love sharing our knowledge as well as meeting new people who think like us but might be in different industries or doing, different practices so we can partner and share better practices in many arenas. And so what are we going to talk about today? We've got the good, the bad, and the in between in regards to communication. I had the ugly on there to start with, but I changed it because I'm like, it doesn't have to be ugly, and we don't want it to go there. We've got some elements to think about when you are communicating. There's so much than just what comes out of your mouth. So how do we plan to win? And then we have a template we're actually going to go over today that we're going to send to everyone to use and to brainstorm. And it's something that you'll hear where it came from and some what I wouldn't do again in regards to how I reacted, helped kind of create that template. So it's definitely applicable to real use. And so before we get into, I kind of have a quiz for those of you on the line, and feel free to enter any information in chat or thoughts or comments. But while I'm talking, feel free to peruse these blue boxes. And Julie, I'll be curious to hear what you have to say. But I wanted to read some definitions about communication that I found. The first one, which is the most boring, is exchanging information or news. I'm like, oh, okay. Wikipedia's definition was the act of developing meaning among entities or groups through the use of sufficiently mutually understood signs, symbols, and semiotic conventions.
A lot of words.
Well, yeah, the end of it, I'm not quite sure about. But I like the mutually understood signs and symbols
Yes, that I
because
like.
that means that you understand what your customer knows, experiences, their background, so you can deliver accordingly. So I thought that we're winning, we're getting better here. And then the last one, which is really funny, because when you search on Google and you get like the most popular answers, there literally was the question of what is the best definition of communication? Because the first two were so.
Hmm.
And the next one is communication is giving, receiving, or exchanging ideas, information, signals, or messages through appropriate media, enabling individuals or groups to persuade, seek information, give information, or express emotions. So
That one works too.
it's adding on, it's encompassing, it's more, it demonstrates that it's not just words or hearing, it's watching as well. So fascinating. So let's discuss, how well do any of you do the following items? I know something I'm working on, but is there something, Julie, in obviously your journey with your leadership coaching certification, and now, working in an adjacent realm, adding value to everything you do? What have you learned that either you're working on or you find that's an opportunity for a lot of the people you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in the world of continuous improvement, and finding root cause in the actual issues, is listening to understand, the active listening and checking for understanding. Really kind of not trying to listen to respond, but truly listening to understand, to know, okay, well, what follow-up questions do I need to ask to get more information, or to really find whatever that root cause is, instead of just keeping the conversation going. So just trusting in the process that we'll get where we need to go. I don't need to move it along. I just need to do a better job listening and observing to figure out what the issues are.
Fun fact, that was the one I was going to touch on as well. And an additional spin. I like how you said, uh, not just needing to keep the conversation going. If it should end, it should end.
Yeah.
And I am someone who likes to be the last person to email, for a couple of reasons. One, I don't know why, but the other one is to confirm that's over. It's done.
I love it.
Thank you. No, thank you. Thank you.
Now
Have a
I'm
great
just
day.
gonna leave hanging texts for you out there with no response.
I'll respond all the time.
There
But
you go.
yes, active listening, to listen and digest, not being ready to talk back. And that's something that after obviously doing this training and whatnot, it's hard. It's hard to pause your brain, to stop. So challenge for all of you, how do you pause and listen? And we're going to go a little bit more into detail on that same topic in a bit. Thank you, Julie. I love that
You're
we
welcome.
selected the same one,
Okay.
even after vacation.
Right.
And so the definitions we just heard, right, gave us various avenues of how to understand what communication is. But there's definitely three types: verbal, nonverbal, written, and visual. We're obviously very familiar with the verbal action, right? Talking, hearing other people speak, whatnot. But the nonverbal one is fascinating. And I don't know if anyone saw the post I had on LinkedIn over the last week, where who's happy that their mask covers most of their face, because their face sometimes responds in ways that faster than the head can think, right? Sometimes I wish my mask covered my eyes too, because I find myself thinking that it does, or I have sunglasses on and I'm staring. I'm like, stop. And I know, Julie, that I've always worked on my facial reaction. And the one time you and I were in a training class as guinea pigs to hear, it's like 4 or 5 hours. And afterwards, the marketing leader who's sitting across from me said he watched my face the whole time because he wanted to see how I was going to react, because it was a trial of this training content. And I think I did a decent job, but he said there was a couple places I either winced or did something, and he had more questions about it. And so even though I tried hard to not move my face and react, I did. So something I always have to be mindful of. So challenge for all of you is, how do you be mindful of how your face reacts that you don't even know? Or maybe Botox the whole thing and you'll be good.
That's always an alternative.
The other thing to think about is visual communication, signs, information. And lots of times it's there to guide people, to answer questions, to help them make a decision. Everywhere from a stoplight to a sign at the airport to values being posted all over buildings that are specific to a company, right, and their culture. And I'll say kudos to the companies that use what's on the wall. And it's not just wallpaper, it's actually driving activity, reminding people of expectations. But if you're at a company that does have wallpaper, right, your communications are falling flat because it's not reinforcing or helping behavior, get to where the company wants it to be, which can actually create resentment. It's meaningless. I know at a place I worked, it created a lot of cynicism because they were being hypocrites, because the wall said one thing, but the actual behavior said something different. So be mindful of that. You forget that there might be words on the wall driving activity that's not working. And the last thing I want to mention here is the professionalism in regards to communication. There are so many ways in media to communicate now. Obviously, you've got meetings, meeting invites, emails, text messages, Slack, um, newsletters, various calendar invites for multiple people, decisions, stand-ups, right? Lunch, hallway conversations.
Mm-hmm.
People are watching you all the time. And we know that being a leader is exhausting. It's 365 days a year and it's 24/7 and people are always watching. And so I didn't learn this early enough in my career. But this is if I had to learn or, tell my younger self something was watch yourself, be professional. And of course, my mom was always like a helpful reminder, Jennifer, you have a spelling error or something. But people are watching and you want to come off as a professional individual. So be mindful of what your texts are saying. Do you have spelling errors, incomplete sentences, etc.? I know I'm not perfect, but I'm working on that because I always want to create that professional front. And Julie, you said it earlier. What's the most part of communication?
Yay. Listening. Yes.
Listening, right?
You've seen my close your mouth, ears up, and I always remember that the listening part. Whenever you're involved in a conversation, close the mouth, ears up.
Yeah, 100%. And that's, yes. And this whole thing is, what does it say?
Yes.
Talking, you're not listening. Listen to learn, not to respond, which is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Pause your brain and where it wants to go and listen and digest and um, pause on that response. Sometimes listen longer. You might discover things. Listening to others, especially those maybe on your team or you're working with, maybe they actually don't know what they're talking about. But it's not no fault to them. It's because they're just reiterating what you've been talking about. And now all of a sudden you hear it come back and you're like, oh, I missed the mark. Oh, I didn't communicate enough. I didn't give the full picture. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
like it's a chance to actually learn and reflect on yourself. Um, as painful as it might be, we all have to learn and improve, right? And you'll hear a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stories where I stepped in piles of opportunity early
Piles of
previously in my
opportunity.
life, right?
I love your listen longer quick. I'm actually coaching somebody
Yeah.
right now to not jump in and speak as much in meetings because she feels like she dominates the conversation. And it's been a real challenge for her to just stop and sit and listen longer. But one of the unexpected surprises that we found is when she sits and listens longer and leaves the silence sit out there, she actually ends up with less on her plate because she is not as likely to take on stuff that she shouldn't take on. And it allows her team around her to have the opportunity to step in and take ownership more, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Fascinating.
Right?
So indirectly, she's driving engagement, ownership, demonstrating respect.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of things. That's awesome. And how hard was it for her to do that, to stop?
Very, very. She had a rubber band on her wrist and she would sit there and snap her rubber band on her wrist and on her calls to make sure she would stop talking.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome though, but listen
Mhm.
longer. You'll see body language as well, especially if you're coaching someone or your leader who's trying to shape and adjust behavior, right? Pause and you can observe how that person's actually their nonverbal activity that needs to be,
Mhm.
you know, get some feedback on how to improve it or make changes. Perfect. And then the last one is be ignorant. Even if you know the answer, how do you ask? And I'm picking up, Julie, what you've planted really well with me is the open-ended questions, right? Explore. How did they get to where they got there? What's how did they come to that conclusion? There's so many questions, or confirm that you understand what they're saying, which helps them I guess, realize that they did communicate effectively because you do understand what they're talking about.
Yeah. And
Yes,
our August webinar is actually going to be on those open-ended questions. So be
yes,
ready for that one because that one is
perfect.
coming up. So teaching you how to say, what the heck were you thinking? Instead of walk me through your thought process, because the walk me through your thought process is much better. And that's good for the questions for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yes. But yes, so building off of the open-ended questions, ask them, even if you know the answer, but also know that people around you might not know the answer. And as a coaching opportunity for the individual communicating, you can ask questions to help give everyone else around you do it in a way, we'll get to it, do it in a way that's not condescending, elitist, or you know exactly what's going on and no one else does. So think about your own tone, behavior, obviously nonverbal activities. And so with that, there used to be animations here. They're not anymore for good reason. And exactly what Julie just said with the open-ended questions, instead of saying, what the heck will you do, right? Think about better verbiage, but also understanding that the tone, the connection you make with people that they take away is, if you were to, bucket this as 100%, right? 8% of the words makes the connection. That's tiny. 37% is tone and 55% body or facial language. But thinking about tone, right? I have the example I have is when I pick my kids up from daycare, and I can be like, hey, how was your day? And the answer from, say, the daycare teacher could be like, oh, amazing. You'll never believe what happened. Or it could be like, amazing. You'll never believe what happened. Which one would I rather have?
Definitely number 2.
Definitely number 2, because it means that, yes, it was great and it was probably safe and good and no one got sick and who knows. To think about your tone with that. And again, it's hard to know, get feedback. And then what is scary is that the body and facial language, your nonverbal cues can sometimes trump what your words are saying. So if you're saying one thing, but your body is rolling your eyes and you're shrugging and you're not reinforcing what you're saying, people are going to follow your body language more than your words, which is very scary. You're not going to create the connection. You're not going to get the information to the people that need it or want it.
Which is especially scary today, and why we are sticklers when we're meeting with people that we want cameras on, if at all possible, to help replace it. I know it's exhausting, but it just is such a big component of communication right now.
Right. The other thing to have your camera on too is if you're eye roller or you're some facial movement, if your camera's on, you can practice.
Right.
If we all go back in the office tomorrow and we've been off camera for 365 days, I'm going to be out of practice.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to wear a mask to cover it. So no one can see.
There you go.
Oh, now it comes up. There we go. So essential skills, right? We talked about understanding your customer. What do they need to hear from you? How do I change my message, differently according to their background, their goals, their needs? What's their preconceived notion of all of this? What company did they work for before? Where are they in their maturity journey, right? Doesn't mean age. It just means where are they in regards to their ability to, to take in this activity. Obviously, active listening, what we've talked a lot about so far. Transparency, I want to touch on this because this is hard sometimes for people. What are they allowed to share? How much of the story can they share? How honest can they be? And what I've learned, and Julie, I'm curious what your experience is over definitely the last 10 years, I worked for companies that were very transparent. Things weren't going well, but leadership was on it. And here's what they were doing. Don't be alarmed, versus let me hide everything behind a closed door and then surprise, look what happened. Being transparent gains respect. It gets people at least to understand. It's challenging and it's tiring for leaders to sometimes be transparent, but they have to think of their internal customer when they are communicating.
Especially for those leaders that have to play that in-between role of being in the know, but pretending they're not in the know. If they're not good from the facial aspect of pretending that they don't know, you just do more damage of people creating their own stories, because they can certainly tell in those cases. You're not fooling anybody.
No. And the other element with transparency is I am working with a startup in town who's grown like mad because of they are in COVID testing. They perform COVID tests, and they have a lot of new hires right out of college. Sometimes they're still in college, and they're extremely hard workers. And I was actually in there for kind of leadership 101. And what we discovered is that because they haven't worked for many companies over, a couple decades, they don't realize what is said in meetings is sometimes confidential. People's pay, people's performance, a lot of the issues we're dealing with is around people pay, performance, promotions, et cetera. And so they leave these meetings and then they go share this information. And it's like, oh, No. So every meeting there's a disclaimer, like what's you're in a leadership role, what's said in here needs to stay in here. And if you have to ask questions, you come to this person. So going a little bit above and beyond to help them understand the scope that they can fall in. And then the last one on here I'm going to mention is the no surprises. Has anyone ever been a part of a meeting where it's like, and now we're going to talk about strategy and blah, blah, blah. What do you think about that, Julie? And
Right.
Julie's like, wait, what? What was the question again?
Sorry. You're like taking it in all at the same time, and you're like, oh, I did not know about that.
Right. Versus, hey, Julie, we're going to talk about strategic and A, B, and C. And what are your thoughts on this? Right. And I have a Peloton, and I ride with a bunch of people in the morning, and I had my 400th ride a month and a half ago. And I did DM. I was at, Peloton Nerd. I DM'd the teacher, and I was like, it's my 400th ride. You're amazing. Can you give me a shout out? Lo and behold, 10 minutes left in the class. We're climbing. The song was terrible, so I wasn't paying attention. Guess what he said?
Go join Pivot.
Keep it up. And I missed it. And everyone was texting me, and they're like, Jen, he called you out. And luckily, they do closed caption. So like a couple days later, I got to go and see it. But I wasn't paying attention. And it's no fault to Matt Wilpers. He's amazing. It was my fault. I wasn't paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
Is your audience listening when you're talking, right? How do you keep them excited? How do you prepare them for what's upcoming? It's work and it's tiring, but it's necessary. And the next two slides, again, we're trying to keep these to 30 minutes. It might go a little bit long as just an FYI. The next two slides speak to thinking about communication, what, where, when, why, how, but then also the change management aspect. So planting some seeds with you. Who are you communicating to? What are you communicating? What's the message? When are you going to give it, right? And it could be a status update. It could be happening in a stand-up. It could be very simple, something to not have to think too hard about, but other communications might want to be thought out, planned, get understand who the customer is so it's appropriate. The timing is great and met the needs, which leads me to the slide that talks about ADKAR and change management, awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And Julie does trainings on these as a certified practitioner, and it is phenomenal. Not only is it leadership training, it's obviously change management, it's communication. And Julie, do you have any, I'm not doing this justice at all. I recognize that. But if you had to give everyone on the phone or the video, a sentence or a minute about it, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say for that, ADKAR is really just some simple steps for you to be able to follow to understand where people are in the change management process, because we often plan change as to how we would want it or what step we're in. This will help you acknowledge what steps other people are in. And if you want to know more about this one, go back to our YouTube channel because we did an intro on change management, and we'll talk about it more in May when we talk about using this concept to create those change communications. So when you start talking about the content of the message, we'll get to that.
Yes. And with that, understanding where they fall. I mean, the big thing is getting at people's desire. Giving them the awareness helps give them the heads up, like it's coming. But you also have to understand, what do they need to know to get excited about, whether it's a change, it's a new process rollout, or it's, something minor. It's still be aware of who your customer is and make sure that you're giving them what they need. Be the supportive leader to obviously keep things going, and as 100% best practice.
Exactly. And far too often we just jump right into knowledge and we send out an email invite without making sure that people know that it's coming, or we give them information and then we ask them if they have any questions and they're so caught off guard they don't even know how to respond to it because they haven't gone through awareness and desire yet.
Yep. So it's a process, but it's not complicated, and it's something you can build into your daily life. Just ask my husband. No manipulation going on there. And with that, kind of wrapping up what we just touched on, use communication to excel as a leader. Practice it all the time. Be professional and gain credibility. I should be a spokesperson for Grammarly. If you haven't seen it, it's an app. You can actually, I pay $100 a year, and it edits all of my emails, my documents. It makes sure my grammar's correct, my spelling errors, et cetera. It's phenomenal. It makes my life faster. So as a continuous improvement aspect, it's removed a bunch of waste. But be professional. And I really believe this gains credibility. And the story I have here is there's someone in my life who will remain nameless, who, when I text with her, I don't understand what she's talking about because there's misspellings. It's not consistent. It's not clear. It's not coherent all the time. Sometimes it is, but I'm lost. And if I was to think about would I want this person on my team, would I hire them at my company? Absolutely not. Because if they can't clearly communicate with me over text messages, I'm going to put them in a room with other people to help get things done. So unfortunately, the credibility gets knocked down a bunch. And it's those small things. And as we mentioned earlier, you're being watched all the time, and all of your actions and behaviors could be embedded in someone else's head. So while it's not fun, we want to demonstrate more positives than we do negatives.
And I know I've said it before, Jen, and I'll keep saying it again. Every time you open your mouth, you are leading people. And I had somebody tell me that once and it stuck with me. And I keep telling everybody that it doesn't matter if you're an actual leader of people, you have direct reports. If you're opening your mouth and you're saying something, you're leading and influencing others.
Which is scary.
Right.
Which is why I feel like I need a mask on a lot. I'm glad the clear ones aren't, FDA approved.
Right.
And with that, we want to give everyone on the call something to take home with them. And I mentioned earlier that this template was created because of the maturity opportunities, the responses I've had, both verbally and as a nonverbal aspect to certain situations. And so this template helped me walk through all those challenging situations, but also some positives. The goal is to be ready with questions, ready with a professional response, maturity, etc. And real quick, the form is not complicated. What's the scenario? It could be one that I have been in before that I never want to experience again. It could be a missed opportunity where I didn't recognize someone, or maybe it's almost like a risk assessment. I'm going into a huge meeting with a bunch of personalities. How can I pre-plan my behavior, my responses, arm myself with open-ended questions so I don't get, whether it's thrown under the bus, but I'm ready to hear more, experience, et cetera, in a positive way. So why is this scenario a problem, or it might not be a problem, but understand the magnitude of this, especially the past situations that you were in that didn't go so well. And then especially when you think about ones that you've been in, how did you respond? Was it negative? Was there a lot of, they're standing up and throwing your arms? You'll see that in a second. But what do you want your response to actually be, right? With body language, cool, calm, collected. What do you need to do to get there? Is it a pause? Is it a deep breath? Is it Julie's example with the rubber band that's going to prevent you from jumping in and solving problems or getting involved? Same thing, pre-plan of action, right? What do I need to do? Who needs to be included? And then be armed with questions to ask. And if you're not armed with anything, arm yourself with, how did you come up with that conclusion? What was your thought process?
I love this. I love it. It's so funny because this stuff just is making the space and the time to think about how you want it to go. And it's like you just have to make that time and space. And I promise just making the time and space will automatically put you steps above where you were previously.
Yes. And I joke, I've been on my maturity journey forever, and I will never end. Leaps and bounds when I finally started to look around me and see how other people were responding. So I was comparing myself to others, but because I valued what they were doing. And yes, we are going to go past the 1:30 mark. But if you have to jump off, don't worry, we'll be emailing this to you. But to run through a couple examples, this first one is the one that sticks out in my brain the most. I was a project manager for a large project. We actually had 3 total project managers: IT, accounting, purchasing, and then myself for the business and operations. And it was a challenging project. Fast forward to the end, we went live knowing that there were some risks and integration issues on the purchasing side. We knew that. Well, fast forward 3 months, they still weren't complete. Fast forward another month, we get in a meeting with the presidents and the VPs and my boss and the person in Portland who eventually threw me under the bus and said that all of the lack of integration activity was my fault. I kid you not. I've never been accosted like that. Did I respond in a mature way? No. I'm pretty sure I stood up, I was pointing at the phone saying, he's a liar. This is not the truth. I literally reflect on this and I'm embarrassed constantly. But I remember leaving that meeting room being like, holy smokes, no one else got as up in arms as I did. No one else got mad at so and so. The president calmly asked questions, right? He wanted to understand the situations. Forget about the past. We needed to move forward because it was bad. What are we going to do next? And I'm like, I'll never forget this. I remember exactly where we're standing. And I'm like, huh. So when I eventually created the form, it was, what would I do next time? Obviously, as hard as it would be, I'm not going to stand up. I'm not going to point at the phone. I'm going to take a deep breath, right? I'm going to arm myself with questions. And the first one is just give me the current state. So if my head was so wrapped up in the inability to formulate a coherent question, current state, I can always go back to current state and at least get them to walk through something where I have time to formulate, a better question. So again, Julie, what you said, doing these things beforehand, predicting where things could go wrong, where they could go great, and how you build from it, is huge. So this one was a large notch in my maturity journey. 2 steps forward, but I would say 10 steps, 2 steps back, but like 10 steps forward in regards to the growth that I've had from this. Because what I did then is I started to observe other people's behavior that I valued. And was like, oh, I want to do more of those things. I don't need to mimic them, but I need to start to embody their approaches. And this one is specific. And I know someone on the phone right now worked at this company with me where suppliers were constantly dropping the ball. Stuff was stuck at the border. Machines broke down. And this individual, his name is Steve, he would get phone calls once a week. Hey, we can't produce. We can't deliver. Hey, this, hey, that. Every single time he would rise from his desk, he would walk past me and say, hey, Jen, I'm going to go let the general manager know that we have an issue. And then he'd come back and he's like, I did that so he doesn't get all up in arms on what might happen. And then we're going to create a plan. I don't have an answer yet, but we're going to figure it out. He would get the right people on the phone. We would assemble a plan. It might involve calling the customer at that point, but it wasn't hurry up and call the customer. We're not going to meet their orders. It was trying to problem solve and figure it out what they're going to do, and then follow up with the general manager to give the solution. It was the same approach every single time. And when he eventually retired, we knew we were going to get the same phone calls that molds were stuck at the border, machines broke down, something happened. But the fact of having a process of what you do, the right people to get involved, and the teams were phenomenal. 99% of the time it was the border or the vendor. It was not the company, but they problem solved to their heart's content to get it done. But again, same thing every time. And I'm like, it's amazing. I need to do more of that. And then the next one I have is this is reflection on when I led the recruiting team at a transportation company where we're hiring drivers, thousands of drivers monthly. It was insane. There was so much going on, so many internal customers. And I don't think I ever got mad or anything. This is one where I was able to demonstrate my maturity, where it literally was a measured approach. I had to listen to everyone. Sometimes I had to take work home with me, but it was one thing at a time, making a list, always responding in a calm with a smile. Tell me your issue, let's figure it out, versus shutting my door saying, I can't listen to you right now. And then the last two, which I think are definite needs for anyone, is to make sure that you recognize when it's deserved. Don't miss the chance to recognize great behavior, great action, great ownership. No, and if you're not good at it, that's fine. But recognize when you should be, giving the feedback, shaping behavior in a good way. Is it someone stepped up to the plate, someone knocked out a meeting, someone sent a detailed meeting agenda, right? Sometimes it's the small things, but planting that with yourself so that you don't let it miss you. You can go give that high five. You can stop at their desk and say, nice work on A, B, and C. That's so big to reinforce good behavior, good actions, good ownership. I know I ran through all of those. And so what do you do next, right? And just some suggestions summarizing what we've talked about. Ask for feedback. Does your message make sense? How is your body language, right? Get feedback, as painful as it might be to hear. We need to know, is it videotape yourself? If you don't want to ask for someone right now, videotape yourself on how you respond, or put your camera on in Zoom, right? As Julie said, monitor your current communication methods. Are they professional? Are they complete? Do they make sense? Do you need to sleep on them? I know for a fact I have to sleep on all proposals. because I am going to think of things at night and come back with better information in the morning versus hurrying up and getting it out. That's now my process. I will sleep on a proposal.
Literally,
listen,
no, just tuck it under the mattress.
listen, not to talk, as we said. And then how are you going to ensure a mature response in a challenging situation? So taking what we just talked about with that template, so you can plan and be successful and demonstrate, these people have obviously rubbed off on me in a very positive way, those around me. How can you have the same of people around you? Which this training, crazily, is a perfect intro into what we have coming in May. Right, Julie?
Absolutely. So one of the questions we got coming out of our ADKAR training was, so we know that we need to plan these communication messages, but what's the best way to plan them? What's an easy way? Because if you're like me, you sit down to write out an email as to trying to explain what's going to change and what the impact is. And then I sit there and I stare at the screen for 30 minutes and then I type some stuff and then I delete it all and then I type some more and then I delete it all. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we've got this beautiful matrix that helps us understand the benefits and the risks associated both for the company and for the person. That really just helps us if we sit and talk about it. It basically creates the impactful change message for us. So we're going to talk about how to create that. You're going to get the tool walking out of there. That is Wednesday, May 26th from 9:30 to 10 Eastern.
Awesome.
Sign up right on our website. And there'll be a link in the email you're going to get after this as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie. And in general, if you like what you heard, you want more, we're available for free calls. We have, I would say, pretty darn good remote training, engaging training, as well as meeting facilitation. We've got lots of tools under our belts. Third-party outsource partner as well is a big thing for companies, to help out, bring the extra skill set, don't hire it. Huge win with change management activity is mentioned on here. A lot of lean leadership activity going on right now, projects that we have with other companies, as well as lean assessments, deployment recommendations, anything with project management. We're definitely your people. If you have questions, please feel free to email us, call us. You can find out more info on jointpivot.com. And with that, since I am 8 minutes over, I am going to end this. And I want to thank everyone for their participation.
You got it. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next month.